Hi, I'm Liz Stockenborg, and we are going to work on how to prepare a trip report for the upcoming Christmas bird count. So I'm going to share my screen. And the first thing, of course, you'll need to do is to go ahead and open your eBird account. So you can see I'm on my home page. And in order to get to the trip reports, you click on My eBird. And then under the Manage My, you can see checklists, locations, trip reports, alerts, etc. So for the purposes of today, we are going to look at trip reports. So click on Trip Reports. And as you can see, I'm a fan of trip reports. So I've created 35. And just as an example, when I go somewhere, I like to keep track of the birds I've seen in that particular location. So this was my trip to the Dry Tortugas earlier this year. You can see that there were 18 checklists created. Each of these little dots represents a place where that checklist was created. We saw 79 species in total, and one other that maybe we couldn't identify. And in that group, it shows that there were 11 lifers for me, which was great for that trip. Anyway, that's just an example of a trip report, and I urge you to use them if you're going somewhere or you're going on a birding trip and you may do multiple checklists at one point and you want to keep track. So we're going to go back to my eBird and click on Trip Reports. And then we are going to click on Create a Trip Report. And for our purposes, I'm going to call this the Villages Lake Panasoffkee CBC, Sector 1, Team 1. Each of the eBirders for each team will be creating a trip report and then sharing it with me, and we're going to go through how to do that. So depending on which sector you're in and which team you're on, there may be 1 to 3 teams in each sector. Just make sure you make a note of the team. So for everybody, the start date is going to be January 2nd of 2024. And the end date is also going to be January 2nd of 2024. So I'm going to close that out. You'll see that when we created this trip report, that 12 a.m. was the default starting time and 11:59 on January 2nd is the ending time. You can leave it for those times if you want. Otherwise, you can modify it to say, well, we're not going to start at midnight. We're going to start at, let's just say 7, and we'll probably end when it gets dark, maybe closer to 6 o'clock. Oops. So there you go. Now, you can also see that you have an option to select the visibility of your trip report. This is a link only that means that you have to share the link before someone can view it. My recommendation is go ahead and make it public so people can see it on eBird pages and in the hotspots and things like that. So once you've done that, just go ahead and create your trip report. You'll see that, yes, it's January 2nd. It's going to be public. It's the Village Lake Panasoffkee CBC Sector 1, Team 1. And I am going to now save and view that trip report. The next thing you want to do is you can add people to your trip report by clicking up here. You can use their eBird username or their email, and you have to separate it by commas. I would expect that all of the team leaders should be on your trip report, and then whoever else that uses eBird on your team that would like to also share those checklists, you can add those as well. And you simply just click on the person, then you get a scroll down to invite that person. I'm not going to do that because Anne will get an alert and she doesn't need another alert from me. And then the other option is to create them either as a commenter or an editor. And I would suggest putting them in as editors. Editors can add comments to a trip report. They can edit the narrative, and they can invite additional people to a trip report. And then when you're finished with that, you just click done, and you have created your trip report. So the last thing that you need to do before you finish with your trip report is share it. So you click on the share button and you get this link. So you can either copy it or email it to me. Either way is fine. Email is my preferred method of getting them, and then I will save them all together. So that once you've done that, just copy it and send it to me. And then you're all set. The last thing that you're going to do is at the end of your trip report, well, I'm going to show you what happens. I'm going to show you a trip report consolidation from last year. These were all of our CBC totals for last year. And as you can see, we had 103 checklists. We had 118 species that were observed and 4 others that were either not identified or some hybrid of some sort. So that was a really good first effort on our Christmas bird count. Very excited about it. You can also see on the map where all of the checklists were created. There is an option. So if you have created a trip report and you need to change a checklist, or a checklist got in there perhaps that you did not intend for it to get in there. So go into your own trip report and you can click on the checklists. And for instance, you don't want to include this January 3rd one. So it gives you the option to manage your checklists. If you see one that maybe wasn't in your area, or for some reason somebody did birding outside of your CBC or outside of the hours, you can just uncheck that and then it will stop appearing on the trip report. You will also need to do that. I will explain this in a little bit. You'll also need to do that for my master trip report. So when I create the master trip report for this year, I will invite all the eBirders and team leaders to join my trip report. Please accept it. And then you'll get real-time versions of what is happening as the day progresses. And each time a checklist goes in, you can actually see it and how many species we've observed during that day. It's super fun to kind of track. The last thing I want to show you is at the end, when you're finished with your trip report, you may be asked to add a narrative to your trip report. And this is basically for the team leaders to give us your time and effort. And I'm going to show you one that I did for my Christmas bird count in West Marion. So here's where the narrative is. And you get the option to add a narrative to it under your edit. And it says edit narrative. So you click on that. And for mine, I just wanted to talk about the weather. I wanted to talk about how many people we had. You're going to say how many people were on your team, put in the names. You're going to add your effort data, which is how many miles you did, either walking, driving, kayaking, by golf cart. eBird keeps most of this, but it's not going to necessarily know if you were walking or driving. So the team leaders will need to keep track of that with the help of the eBirders on the team. And then any other information that you feel might be helpful is good for creating a narrative for the trip report. And this is for future people who are doing it in the years to come. So I think basically that kind of covers it. And good luck on January 2nd and for any other Christmas bird counts that you may be doing. And that's all we have.